Hey, what's up you guys? Today I am going to be talking about the Wayward children's series by Seanan mcguire and ranking all the books that are out so far from worst to best. My overall thoughts on the series are that they are all good, but none of them blow me away. I don't hate any of them, but I also don't love any of them. They're all very much in the middle, and that is reflected in my rankings. Every single book has been either a 3-star or a 4-star, and a 3-star for me is I liked it, 4-star is I really liked it, and then 5 is like I loved it. So nobody's hit like that 5-star mark, but I have still really enjoyed the series. And if you don't know what it is about, basically the shortest summary is that it follows different children who go to fantasy worlds such as Wonderland from Alice in Wonderland, Neverland from Peter Pan, Narnia from the Narnia series, and then once they leave these worlds, they go back to the real world. Obviously, nobody really believes them, and they then go to this school ran by a teacher called Eleanor West, and she also once upon a time went through a portal into a fantasy world. And all these children are in this school, which is kind of like a foster home as well, I guess. It's like a boarding school, foster home type situation, and they are getting used to the world, and obviously they go on different adventures. Some of them go back to the world, some of them don't, and a lot of different stuff happens. There are 6 books out so far, and I just recently read 3 of them, basically back to back. So they're all very fresh in my mind, apart from like the first 2. But yeah, I am going to be ranking them all. I would say that I think the issue for me is that I love the worlds and I love the imagination of, you know, the different places that the people visit, but the characters themselves don't really grip me. And I think a really big issue for me is how on the nose Seanan mcguire is with the different social issues that she tries to present in this series. Every book kind of focuses on something. So one of them really digs deep into gender expectations and stereotypes. One of them talks a lot about fat phobia. There's just different things like that, which are all great topics to be represented, and I think are all worthy of being represented. It's the way that Seanan mcguire does it is like so ham-fisted, and it's because the fact that they are novellas means that she's on like a very short word count, I guess. So she's really trying to get her points in, but she doesn't fully form them, and they do feel like very on the nose and very forced at times, which is a shame because a lot of these issues, or all of these issues, are worth being talked about and worth being represented. I just don't think that she does it very well. One of the best ones is that one of the characters in one of the later books is intersex, and she handled that one really well because it was just like done delicately enough and balanced enough where it wasn't like brought up so much, and it did reflect into the themes of the book, but it wasn't forced. And I think that that was the very last book, that was book 6. So I think that she is learning, I think she's improving as a writer, and we'll talk about this as we go through the different books. But yeah, I actually think that as a series, it is improving as it goes on, which I know is not always everyone else's thoughts. I think the reviews on Goodreads are going down as the series progresses, but personally, I mean, I don't want to ruin my ranking, but I think the later ones are better. So yeah, all that to say, we are going to jump into my reviews now, and I'll be reviewing the books from worst to best. So my least favourite book is Come Tumbling Down, which is book 5, and this is a direct continuation of, I think, books 1 and 3, which follow Jack and Jill. And in this book, Jack and Jill come back from their world to the school. This whole video will be non-spoilers, but I think I have to say that obviously at some point in the previous books, Jack and Jill go back to their own world, and I don't think that's a spoiler, like it doesn't change anything you knowing that. So they come back and they request help from other kids in the school to go back to their world, the moors, where they need help fighting a battle, and I'm trying to be very vague here. And the other kids from the school then go back to the moors and explore the moors and get involved in this plot, and that's pretty much all I can say. And I think my main issue with this book is that it's not badly written at all, it's just that it's unnecessary. It didn't add anything, it didn't make Jack and Jill's previous stories more interesting or, you know, more fully fleshed out. It didn't add anything at all to the series. It just felt completely unnecessary to me. And the whole plot of Jack or Jill coming to the school to request help and taking these other kids to their world, it was cool, but the other characters didn't do anything. Like once we got to their world, the other characters didn't do anything other than sacrifice themselves, which doesn't mean anything because this world is full, or this series I should say, is full of like the resurrection trope. Like everyone comes back, like nobody is actually dead. To be honest, like there's a lot of characters that have powers that they can like make characters come back to life and stuff, so someone dying or sacrificing themselves doesn't mean anything. So other than like some sacrifices which are basically undone like 10 pages later, there's nothing for these other characters to do. Like, Jack and Jill are still the main focus, and the other characters are just like tagging along and exploring the world, which would be interesting to, you know, see, or it is interesting to see the mirrors through another pair of eyes, but we've already explored the mirrors before, so it didn't add anything new. And I just think that it was a fun book, and like, I didn't hate reading it, and I didn't have an issue reading it. I purely just thought that it didn't add anything at all to the series. So in 5th place, I have Every Heart a Doorway, which is book 1 in the series, and this completely sets up what the series is going to be about, who our main characters are, and also what the setting of the school is like. And what a lot of people don't talk about is that this first book is very much a murder mystery, and once that part of the plot really picked up, I was really invested in it, but it took a while to get there, and at first I thought I was just kind of meandering. Like, none of the characters, like I've said before, really interest me that much. It's the different worlds, their politics, their creatures, their settings, just the imagination that goes into them that keeps me reading this series, and I don't believe we explore any fantasy world in the first book, so I was a little bit disappointed in that. I could be wrong about that, it's been a while since I read the first book, but yeah, I just remember thinking, like, what is really the point here? And I know for a fact that I said in my first review that if I didn't have the other next books for free, I would not be continuing on the series, so I'm glad I did have the other ones for free, because obviously I do like the series overall. I just think this first book is quite weak, and I also think that this is the worst written of them all. Sean McGuire in this first book really tries to put a lot of metaphors and similes and wordplay and stuff in, which comes off like quite cringe. I didn't really like it. I didn't like the dialogue in this first book at all. There was really weird conversations, and like, just conversations that didn't need to be there, and a lot of the issues I said about like forced representation was really present in this first book. Like, there was a lot of stuff that was just like bam bam bam, like kind of checking a tick list, or ticking a checklist. And yeah, I just felt like this first book was not the strongest start to the series, and I think that it does a good job in setting up what the series is and who the characters are and the setting, so in that regard it is well done. It's just like, it didn't keep me that interested, to be honest, and I definitely would not have continued on if I didn't have the next books for free. So I think that as a first book, it should make you want to continue on, it should make you want to read more. In 4th place, I have Beneath the Sugar Sky, which is book 3 in the series, and my issue with this one is that I left a big gap between books 1 and 2 and books 3, and I completely forgot like who all the characters were, so when we were reintroduced to them, I didn't really think any of them were interesting at all, which was already an issue in the previous books. Like, I wasn't ever invested in the characters, like I've already said. So then having a break and coming back to them and trying to remember who's who, I was like, okay, none of these characters mean anything to me at all, and that has kind of progressed throughout the entire series since then. So that was my first issue, and then this book explores a world called Confection, which is like a Candyland type world. It's very much like inside of Willy Wonka's factory meets like that Katy Perry California Girls music video, like that type of thing. And I did think it was really interesting, and I did like that world, but in this book, they really focus on this whole idea of a compass, which is talked about in almost every book, but basically the different worlds that all the characters go to, they try and lay them out in terms of like, is it a logic world or a nonsense world? Is it like kind of based in reality, or is it completely fantasy? And there's like different areas where they try and like group these worlds into and categorize them, which is an interesting system, and I definitely think that it is worthy of talking about. But for some reason in this book, they did not shut up about it like at all, to the point where it was actually really annoying me, and it was like getting on my nerves every time they would talk about it, because the Confection world is, they talk about it being like kind of like half logic, half nonsense or something, and it's just like they spend far too long going on about this compass to the point where it isn't as interesting as they think it is, or as interesting as Sean McGuire thinks it is. And like I said, I don't think it is worthy of being included in the series. Like, I think it is interesting enough to, you know, try and like map out where these worlds go in this compass, but the amount of time they spend on it in this book was ridiculous, and it was really annoying me. What else really annoyed me in this book was that Cora, who is kind of the main focus of this one, she is a fat character, and you know, that's great, and she has a lot of issues with her weight and her body image and stuff, which again is great. I think definitely worth being represented in a book, but it was so heavy-handed. Like, it was constantly like everything anyone said to her, she in her head was like, oh, are they saying that because I'm fat? Like, is it this, blah 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 blah. And I just thought it was like so overdone, and like it got to the point again where it was just annoying me, because Sean McGuire was going on and on and on, like everything was about Cora's weight, and like, I understand that some people, it is like that, you know, like body image and stuff, like, that really can really deeply affect you, but in a 170-page book, having this much time spent on one character relating everything to her weight, and the other characters plus her talking about this compass, it just like annoyed me and made this one not the most fun experience to read. In third place, I have Down Among the Sticks and Bones, which is book 2 in the series, and this one follows Jack and Jill as they discover their world called the Moors and the politics and the life of the people there. And this one features vampires and crazy scientists, and their world is very dark. It is not like a Candyland fun adventure at all. It is basically described as being like stuck in a horror movie, and I really like that. I thought that their world was really interesting, and you know, the contrast and the battle, which is like this eternal struggle between like this vampire lord and this crazy scientist, I thought it was done really well. I think Jack and Jill, out of all the characters, even though I've said that book 6, which is theirs, was my least favourite, I think that they are like the most interesting characters. So I don't know why that book just did nothing for me, but I think it's because at the end of this one, I was like, okay, their story's over. Like, it was nice spending 2 books with them, but like now they're kind of done. And then coming back later, I just was like, I'm kind of done with you, you know what I mean? Like, I liked them, but I was like, I don't need any more of your characters. Like, your story's over. Let's move on to other people. But anyway, so yeah, this book was really good. I thought my only issue with it at all was, again, some of the representation in this one, or like, not so much representation actually. This one is more like societal issues. So Sean McGuire talks a lot about you know, gender stereotypes and stuff like that, because Jack and Jill, who are 2 girls by the way, like their real names are Jacqueline and Gillian. One of them was raised to be very, very feminine, and one of them was raised to be very masculine, even though they are both girls. And it's not like as badly done as the other ones. It's just like very on the nose. Like, a lot of the commentary was just like, okay, we get it. Yeah, like, she keeps hammering in the same points over and over, and I was reading it, I'm like, we're not stupid, you know, like, we understand what you're trying to say. And again, it was like just a little bit too much, but it wasn't as bad as some of the other ones. It didn't annoy me that much. So I actually really did enjoy Down Among the Sticks and Bones, and I think it is definitely one of the best ones. In second place, I have book 6, Across the Green Grass Fields, and this is an unpopular opinion, because if you go on Goodreads, a lot of people say like, oh, I love the whole series, but this one disappointed me. I thought it was boring or whatever. I don't know, people just seem to not like this one as much, whereas I really enjoyed it because I thought that Regan was one of the most interesting characters. I think that the representation that Sean McGuire tries to do in this series, which is Regan as an intersex character, I think it was done perfectly well in this book. I think that of all of the topics that she's tried to cover, this is the best one, because she doesn't really try and hammer it home. She doesn't act like you're dumb and like keep saying the same things over and over again. It is brought up, Regan discovers that she is intersex, and it has like a role in her character development, but it isn't her entire character, whereas like Cora is basically like, you could describe her as being the fat one, which is a shame. Like, no person or character should be described as being like the fat one, but that's all I know about Cora. Whereas Regan was really well developed, and her being intersex, you know, it was a big shock to her at the start, and she kind of comes to terms with it. And her adventure in the Hooflands, which is the world that she visits, which is all kind of like horse themed, like, her identity is very not that crucial to the story, but it's still present in her mind. And I think that just the way that Sean McGuire does it is handled really well. I also think her writing is really improving at this point, and I think that in this one she really goes out her way to subvert our expectations. For example, a lot of the other ones, the characters' issues come from their parents not being loving or being a bit neglectful or ignoring their child and stuff like that. Whereas in this one, Regan's parents really do love her, and she, even when she disappears into her own world, she thinks about her parents. She's like, oh, I really like wish I could say goodbye to them. Like, I miss them. Like, they were so nice to me and stuff. And it deals with bullying as well, which was interesting. I thought that was also done really well. And Sean McGuire goes on to describe like a friendship that is toxic, and I think that was done really well as well. I just think everything in this book was done well, and I know a lot of people didn't like the ending, which I'm obviously not going to go into, but again, I think she really went out of her way to subvert expectations and give us something that we just weren't expecting. You know, like, it's not the typical ending to a fantasy series, especially with like what is set up throughout the book, but I think it was really well written, and I really actually enjoyed Regan as a character. And I mean, I keep saying like I'm not that invested in the characters. This is the only book so far that Regan has been in, So it will be interesting to see her interact with the other characters, and hopefully she doesn't like lose her personality. But yeah, I think this book was really well written actually, and I really enjoyed it. So my favourite book in the whole series so far, and in number 1 spot, is In an Absent Dream, which is book 4 in the series, and this is a prequel to the entire series that takes place away in the past before the events of book 1 and follows Lundy, who's a character we haven't seen since book 1. So because of this, I thought, you know, what is the point of going back to this character that we haven't seen in like 3 or 4 books, especially for like a prequel. But I actually really enjoyed this, obviously, since it's number 1. And what I like the most is that the world that she goes to, called the Goblin Market, has a strong focus on fair value. So there's no currency in this world. Everything is like traded or bartered for, or, you know, like you do manual labor or you help someone with like something. And it sounds quite simple and like the way I'm describing it, but the execution of it is really smart, and it leads to a lot of interesting character development, and you know, the way the plot develops because of the things that they have to do to keep things fair is really interesting and really well done. So I loved that. I thought that it was the most interesting world because of these rules, and that's not something I would expect to say. Like, you know, I would think if you were describing these worlds that we visited just on paper, I would say, like, you know, the Candyland one would probably be like my favourite. Just the execution of this one and the way that the characters do things to try and keep things fair and stuff like that, it just like worked really well, and I was really impressed with it. I also really liked Lundy. I felt that she was an interesting character. I like the side characters as well. I haven't even mentioned any side characters in other books because they all just come and go so fast, but this one had a really nice friendship and really nice, you know, mother-daughter type relationship and stuff like that, and I did really enjoy it. I will say that my only complaint, which I know the last book, book 2, I didn't have any complaints, but this one is like minor, and I think it's only a complaint because it could have made this book even so much better, is that we have a lot of time jumps within this book, and within these time jumps we are told that things happened. For example, there's this whole story about this character called Mockery who died, and it's been very traumatic for Lundy and her friend, and we're told about this like adventure and like battle and stuff. And I just wish that we had actually seen these things, and I found out afterwards that Seanan McGuire released like a short story. I think it's like £1 or 99p or something, and it's like 40-50 pages, and it tells this story that we are just told happened. But I just wish that if it wasn't for the fact she's trying to keep all these books like around the 200 page mark, if this book had been 300 pages and included this side story, it would be so much better. And I think this is the one book out of all of them that could really benefit from being a novel rather than a novella. So it's only my complaint because I just wish that we had more, and I really think this story had the potential to be even better than it already is. So that's my only complaint, and overall I did really enjoy this world, and this book, I should say, not just the world, the book. So those are all my thoughts and rankings for the Wayward children's series. Although, like I said before, I don't absolutely love it. Talking about it out loud, you know, making this video, I realised like I actually do quite like the series, and I am excited for the next book, and I will definitely continue on with them all. So definitely let me know in the comments your own rankings if you have read the series, or your thoughts on, you know, even if you just read the first one, let me know any thoughts on the series at all. Try and keep things non-spoiler though, just in case other people that haven't read the book are, you know, flicking through the comments. And I'd love to have the discussion with you in the comments down below. So yes, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Please subscribe if you have not already, it would really help my channel. And I will see you in my next video.